if the guy from Tumult and the guy from Innumerable Forms just come out with like a death doom band. That's fine, great, but like there's enough death doom bands out there. I was like, well, let's try something different.
Keith the Ghost Cult magazine welcomes in the great Derrick Vella of a bunch of bands, but specifically for this interview, Dream Unending. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing just fine, thanks. And
Just
you?
fine is
You're
good.
good. You're good.
I'm really good. I'm
You're
really good. So we're on the precipice of another Dream Unending album, but we just had one. So you guys are blessing us. I know it's been a banana balls time in the world. Everybody's tired of talking about it, but if the dark times have given us anything, especially creative people, it's more time to work on projects we're passionate about. So catch us up on the arc of the two Dream Unending albums in a row, if you will.
Sure. Let me try to do the Cole's Notes version. Before we started recording the first record, Justin, my bandmate who does drums and vocals, we thought we would both be living somewhat close to each other. I thought I was moving to Philadelphia because that's where my wife was living. Pandemic hits, we change our plans. She moves up here to Toronto. I tell Justin, we're still going to make the record, doesn't matter. And then that sort of motivated us to just do it. And it was like a lot of unknown territory. It's like we never had a band practice. We were never in the same room for anything except for like maybe seeing each other in February of 2020, right before the pandemic hits. And we're just like, we got to do this band. And then that was the last time we saw each other until last summer. So just, trial and error of me just cranking out these demos, making sure they're as perfect as possible, making sure every little detail is there so that Justin can build his drums according to it. First record, we kind of pulled it off. Surprisingly, we were shocked by how well we were able to just go and record it separately. We had a lot of help from my engineer, Sean, and Justin's engineer, Arthur Rizk, who also mixed and mastered the album. And then while we were waiting for it to get mixed and put out, because the wait times on vinyl were so long, the release date wasn't going to be till November, we just figured, well, like that was so much fun. Like we might as well just keep writing more music. And so I wrote another album. And then we made it. And then it comes out in like November.
I love it. It's like when any rapper ever ends a verse, and then I did it.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I was gonna ride up on someone, and then I did it. I love it.
And then you did it. Yeah, exactly.
Statement of purpose. Yeah. Just to dial it back for 1 second to kind of the formation of this group, because I have so many questions.
Oh yeah.
And this is our first time chatting about this project,
sure,
so
man.
I'm super stoked. I love I don't know if it just developed naturally between the two of you. You've got many projects between you. Yeah. I think people know Justin probably best from Sumerlands with Arthur, by the way, yeah. Which have one of the maybe the record of the year, arguably. Certainly in my top 10 for the year.
It's
for sure in my top 10. It's going to be hard to figure out those last few, but and then you got, Tumult and Outer Heaven, I think, and a bunch of other bands possibly that we don't know about, probably other projects and things you're working on. But I love the sound. I want to start with the sound of this band. Did you guys conceive this sound? A friend of mine, I don't know if this is accurate, not a music journalist, but a friend, a music fan. We are in a thread together and we talk about death metal a lot. And he was like, it's like if Primitive Man bumped into Pink Floyd before Dark Side of the Moon in the soundtrack era, which is my favorite era of Pink Floyd. I'm a huge Pink Floyd nerd. Same. And so I figured you were. I love this crazy, heavy, brutal songs, but they're very patient. They're very measured and very thoughtful compositions, and also a lot of incredible soundscapey droney stuff. That's what I hear. So I wanted to know, was that discussed? Did it just kind of come naturally between the two of you? How'd you come up with this incredible sound?
I think we knew that we liked those early Peaceville bands as a sort of blueprint, especially Anathema. Anathema is our favorite of the three. They're the underrated of the three too. I never see anybody talk about Anathema, yet they smoke the other two bands, with all due respect. So we looked at that, and we kind of looked at what makes those early Anathema records so great, which is they're intense, they're epic sounding at times. They're super tragic though. So those are all things we wanted to key in on, but they also, along with the other two Peaceville bands, they clearly were into the goth rock and post-punk of the time. Stuff me and Justin as well. whether it was bands like The Cure, Echo and the Bunnymen, or Clan of Zymox, like all that stuff, all those like sort of swirling single note melodies played through a chorus pedal. They sound so nice. So, you know, it's sort of like, well, why don't we just write these heavy riffs and then put all these clean, swirly stuff on top? I'm a big fan of the guitar player, Robin Guthrie, who was in the band Cocteau Twins. And that's just that whole band. Like that band is just that, right? It's just these like swirling things being played through all these different effects. And it sounds otherworldly, right? So it's sort of like, I want to do a heavier version of that. And that sort of helped color our sound. And we wanted to do something that didn't feel like sort of a run-of-the-mill project. You know what I mean? Like, you know, if the guy from Tumult and the guy from Innumerable Forms just come out with like a death doom band, that's fine, great. But like, there's enough death doom bands out there. It was like, well, let's try something different. Let's do something that feels unique to us. And then it was just sort of a feeling out process from there. I think probably by the time the third song I wrote in the band is one of the title tracks off the first record, which is the song Dream Unending. And I feel like that song sort of became the moment where it's like, okay, I know what I'm doing now. I know what we want to sound like, and sort of just blending all those things together. Pink Floyd, for sure. Like, you know, if you've ever just taken acid and then listened to those records, it takes you to a place, you know, and I like music that does that. I like music that's exploratory. It feels like it's searching for something, and I wanted Dream Unending to be sort of like that. The songs are long and they get longer on the new album, and it's just like this constant tension release, sort of fill you up with something. Yeah. So I think that was those things we really keyed in on, you know, as opposed to just like, I feel like it was very antithetical to being like oppressive doom band or something, you know, a little bit more air, like we have feathers under us or something.
I like it. And shout out for your Clan of Zymox mention. Everybody mentions, I love the post-punk stuff. I was a little kid when it came out, so I was in it a little bit at the time. No one ever mentions that band actually as an influence. They're coming on tour. They're still around. Yeah. And go check them out.
I think they're playing here next year, and I think my wife and I will go.
Amazing. Yeah. I hope you get to go too.
Yeah.
Assuming touring doesn't get in the way, because that's another thing.
I don't. I will see.
Yeah, I get it. Oh, I mean, generally.
Oh,
not necessarily this project. I know may be difficult to pull off live without an ensemble, which was another question I had for you. If you thought you could envision doing some shows or playing any of these albums in full, which I would love to hear. I feel like they deserve to be considered like a whole piece of music. I
would love to do it. And eventually we will. There's no reason that we can't do it. It's just the logistics of it. It doesn't make it easy that I live in Canada. You know, it's not like, it's a lot harder to just sort of sneak across the border with all your gear. And at some point, like I don't have a touring visa anymore right now. So it's like, I have to do all these other things before I can even entertain the idea of going to play shows for it. Also, who are we going to get in the band? How many people do we need? How many people can we get to commit to it? How much can we even commit to it? It's like, those things I feel like become a lot harder when you're not a real band first. You know, it's one thing if you all live within a couple hours of each other. So I didn't do myself any favors by staying in Canada, but you know, it is what it is.
Well, family first, and you know, we all had a global emotional psychotic break at the same time, so you know 1000% self-preservation, you know, and of course, you know, I'm so lucky to talk about music with musicians and talk about art and discuss these things and distract myself from the rest of the fire. Everything is on fire. So, you know, I sincerely hope your family, your friends, your wife, everybody's good, because it's been a time, right? Oh,
for sure. Yeah, no, we're all keeping it 100 up here. It's okay.
Love it. And, you know, I also feel that vibe, but there was definitely a period of time where you could just zip back and forth between America and Canada when I was on the East Coast very easily. I definitely took a bunch of weekends and went from like Boston to, you know, Montreal, Revere for the Metal Fest, and 20-hour drive was like nothing to me and my friends, and then right back to work Monday or school. So, you know, tough times tough times, right? Yeah, the before times.
The
But
before
yeah,
times.
for Song of Salvation, right?
Yeah,
You got to work with some amazing collaborators
yeah.
in addition to your partner there. So tell us about these songs. Did you write these songs with these artists in mind, or how did these come about
No,
ultimately?
not really actually. Like I started writing I think I started writing the title track Song of Salvation before the first record was even finished being mixed. So I didn't really think about anything. I didn't even wait for the finished product of the first record to help steer me in the next direction. I just sort of I came it was really fresh off recording everything. And when you I don't know about other people, but when I record records, at least like with this stuff, there's so much I'm storing in my head, all these different guitar parts, all these riffs, all these solos, what have you. And then you sort of just it just all comes out of you in the period of like 2 or 3 days because you go and track it all. And then you're like done, right? You're like, oh, I'm done. And then you leave and you feel kind of empty. Like you're like, that's it. Like I'm sad. And then you get home and you're like, well, how do I fill the void? Oh, I know. I'll buy more gear and then I'll write more songs. So this is exactly what I did. And then I I started writing all of it. And I don't think I really thought about any real guest appearances until maybe I was about 75% done writing the album. And even then, I wasn't really sure. Like some of them came in pretty late. Some of them, you know, I think the first one we knew what we would do was ask Phil, who used to sing in Sumerlands, Phil Swanson, to sing on the song Secret Grief. Kind of knew that early that someone needed to sing there. I just wasn't sure who. Justin, I think very lightly was like, "Why don't you do it?" And I was like, "Nope, absolutely not. Like, I can sing you the melody, like I can sing it to show to someone, but I'm like, no way am I putting like I don't have the power in my voice or the gravity like that somebody else can bring." And that's why Phil's spot is so sweet on it. And then we have another good friend, Leila Abdul-Rauf, playing trumpet on that part, and she just fucking smokes the thing, man. She's so talented. She's such a wonderful person. And to have both of them on the song, it takes it from being like a fine song to like a great song, in my opinion, at least. Like I'm biased because like I wrote it, but before that I was like, oh, it's okay. And then like in the demoing process, but then when those things were added, it really, really pushed in the net. And that's like the beauty of making music, collaborating with people is, sometimes you have an idea, and if you don't have the means to do it yourself, maybe you just are like, well, it was a good idea that I'm going to throw in the wastebasket. But, Justin was also very on board with a lot of these things. I mean, obviously he wasn't going to say no to having Phil on the record, because they go back. They're still in bands together because they do this band Solemn Lament together, a great band. And he was down with the idea of trumpet. And then getting to know Leila, I was like, do you think you could do this? And she was like, oh, sure. Banged it out probably in no time at all. And just having those people being willing to like work with me on something and like seeing my vision, respecting it, and being willing to like help me fulfill it, like you can't take that for granted. Like you can't really trade that for many things. So that was excellent. My dad plays piano on that song too. And it's so sweet to have my dad on these records. He's on both of them, doing like keyboards and synths, organ, whatever. So that was a big help. My dad is, he's not that old. So he was super into new wave and post punk and was played piano. So he was super into keyboards, got really into MIDI. So now he's just like a MIDI nerd living in the middle of nowhere. So if I'm just like, hey, can you give me a good synth for this? He's like, yeah, like here's like what a Juno 60 might sound like. Here's just like a Yamaha string synth. Like he can just throw them at me. It's so awesome. So he gave me some piano on that one, and that was great. And then later in the record, I have my friend McKenna Rae. She sang on the first record. She comes back and she sings some bars in the closing track, Ecstatic Rain. Gave her more space to sing. I like wanted her part to be longer. I felt like it was such a tease on the first album, and she's such a talent. I was like, I wanted her to have more time to shine. If I could, I would just make like a whole record. Like if just, I wish I could, now my thing is like these people grace me with this thing that is wonderful. And then I'm just like, can I just write a whole record for you? Like, I would write a whole record for Phil. I'd write a whole record for her, like, you know, but there's not enough time in the world to do all that stuff. But those were really big helps. We had a bunch of friends like just whisper something into their iPhones and send it to us for one of the instrumental tracks, which was a lot of fun, kind of mixing all that together. Arthur did a great job with it. It was just fun to have like people involved in it. And then just like even little things, they're just like, oh, thanks for asking. And I was like, no, thank you. Like, it's wonderful. And then lastly, former Star Trek Deep Space Nine actor and audiobook extraordinaire Richard Poe does some spoken word on the record as well, which is really like, that's like for me, but it's cool that other people dig it. Anyways, I think that covers it all of the big guest spots.
Amazing on the DS9 reference there, by the way. Yeah. Good stuff.
And my bandmate Max low-key does some vocals on the closing track. Some people won't catch it, but it's awesome.
Awesome. I want to shout out Leila also. Not only, first of all, like brass and woodwind players are at a whole nother level.
Oh yeah,
whether it's extreme music or not, or
transcendent people. Yeah,
so good. And then like I know people know her from her bands, but her solo stuff is insane.
Incredible, super. Like just that's like, it was such an easy sell for me to ask her. Like listening to her stuff and being like, how do I not ask you to do this? I know you can do it. Like I know how talented you are. This is going to be cakewalk for you.
Right on. So good to hear. Let's do this. I thought we would do a little track by track breakdown. We already just did some of it, but anything else you want to share about these tracks, feel free, from Song of Salvation and, you know, whatever comes to mind. I thought would be a good idea beyond what we just did. But I did want to highlight the guests because I do think they bring a lot of extra, you know, juju to the music.
Oh, yeah, they make the record what it is. Like, that's for sure. The record's 5 songs. The first song, Song of Salvation, it's like 14 minutes. One thing I really noticed with the first record is that it takes about 6 or so minutes to really get going. Like 4 to 6 minutes, I can't quite remember. I was like, I'd like to like grab the listener by the throat within 90 seconds. So it's just like, I'm gonna do like the intro is not super long-winded. It's not, you know, a bunch of chords being held. It's like something being arpeggiated. So it immediately grabs you. And then it's just like, all right, I'm gonna take you on a ride through all these different heavy riffs with all this stuff happening. And there's this awesome part, I feel like 6 minutes in, where Justin is just doing like this like gallop on his toms. It makes the riff sound like a spaghetti western movie. I remember loving that when I heard it. I love the middle of that song. Like there's a clean break with this like solo that comes in that kind of leads you into this big heavy riff. And that moment, it's kind of funny. Like Justin and I always talk about not so much like a riff from a song, but like how something from a song makes us feel. And we're both like, and there's probably a lot of people will roll their eyes at this, but we're both big fans of the album Throwing Copper by Live, 90s alternative rock band. And there's moments on that, especially like the big hit Lightning Crashes, where it's like, oh, I want to capture that feeling. So like we would always like chase things like that or like how King's X songs would make us feel and whatnot. And so that song, like, again, it just is constantly building tension, big release, building tension, big release, like big ending. I love that song. That was the first song I wrote for it. And when I sent it to Justin, he was like, this is better than the first record. And I was like, cool, I'm glad you think so. Means I'm going in the right direction.
So killer. I love great references there with Live and King's X, 2 incredible bands.
Oh yeah,
I'm an especially big King's X fan. Their new album's amazing.
It is. It's really good. It's nice to see them back. I hope they come up to Toronto at some point. I've never seen them before, so I'd love to
it's like a
I'd love to knock them off the list.
Their shows are like a religious experience. King's X fans are some of the best fans ever, just in music. Like they're so dedicated. And the band can't even sometimes compete with the loudness of the crowd.
That's amazing. Like quick aside, Justin, like last week maybe sent me a YouTube link to like a full live set that was broadcasted on a radio station, maybe in like 91. It was, I think at least 3 records were out. I think Dogman was out by then. But, and like the take of when they do the burning down, like it's so fucking good. And I was looking through the comments and someone was like, this version of the burning down has changed my life. And I was like, that's perfect. Like I love reading like YouTube comments like that where people just like really getting their feelings. Like live for that. I
Well,
love that.
I hope you get some comments like that too, because these
I
albums are
I do.
tremendous.
I do, and it's kind of crazy, and I'm super appreciative of it because but just the idea that like something I can write will strike a chord with someone, that's like a pretty it's a pretty crazy thing, but it's a very wonderful thing.
Word.
So it's and I love hearing it. I always love interacting with people about that stuff. The second song, Secret Grief, is sort of like the heartbreaky song of the record. It's way more tragic sounding. Um, I really love this old band from Scotland called the Blue Nile, who are sort of I guess a sort of post-punk band, but not really. I always just call them adult contemporary because I don't know what else to call them, but they just made interesting songs. And singer Paul Buchanan wrote great lyrics that were very simple in their approach and just like very powerful. So I sort of wanted to capture like a bit of how their album Hats sounded with the first couple minutes of that song, and then it gets heavy, and like some of those heavy riffs on that song remind me of like Alice in Chains or King's X, just these like sort of single note riffs, and I love that stuff. Like I always think all my heavy riffs just sound like riffs from Dirt. Like that's it. Like people always like, well, like I think they always want me to name check doom bands for the most part. And if it's not Anathema, it's Alice in Chains. Like I don't know what else to tell you, so it's fine.
I'm gonna
Um,
jump in and say I hear a lot of Elder, especially the
oh
let.
yeah,
I
yeah,
hear a
yeah.
lot of Nick work here,
Yeah.
and and
Well,
all the worshippers.
he's a very talented
Yeah,
fella. Have you heard his like solo project?
I
Yeah,
have.
it's
He's so good.
amazing. I
I'm
reached out to him to be like, this is fantastic. Like, it's really good.
nice.
Yeah.
I bet he loves that too, because I think he's wrestles with knows he's talented, knows he's good, but also like very humble. So I bet
Yeah, yeah.
that was nice for him.
It's
Uh,
no, that's always the best though. Like, you meet some people who are very like full of themselves and you're just like,
right
never
on.
mind.
And
Yeah.
then after the opening track and Secret Grief kick your ass completely for almost 20 minutes, you
Yeah.
come in with the shortest track, the
Yeah.
Murmur of Voices, right? Murmur of Voices.
Yeah, so it's funny, like the first like the record almost for some people feels like thirds, where it's like the first two songs, the middle two songs, and then the last song, right? And I guess for me, like I always think about for me, the middle of the record is like Secret Grief, the shorter track, Murmur of Voices, and then the instrumental Unrequited. But and like a lot of that is like me trying to capture this sort of like late night hotel lobby bar. You know what I mean? Like you're sitting alone and like you're kind of like it's not miserable, but it's like kind of downtrodden. But Murmur of Voices is like a neat little track. That was the last thing I wrote super late in the game, like maybe a couple weeks before I left to record. But it was easy because I was like, Justin, I'm gonna write one more thing, but you don't have to play drums on it. So he was just like, perfect. I wanted both sides of the record to be balanced time wise, and I had a couple things kind of kicking in my head, and I was like, I could really do something with this and make it interesting. And we had a couple little short tracks on the first record, like interludes almost. So I wanted to do something like that again. But the title Murmur of Voices actually comes from like the subtitle they would always put in the early seasons of Deep Space Nine when there's just general chatter on one of the decks. They would just put Murmur of Voices. And I was like, oh, that's super cool sounding. So I took that and I wrote some words, and then I had a bunch of people. I just sent it to them. I was like, hey, can you like send me a recording of you whispering these words, and we're gonna just kind of put them all together, highlight a couple key lines, and it's like kind of just like a vibe setter. You know what I mean? All the like clean stuff I feel like on the record, all the clean spoken or cleanly sung stuff is like a vibe setter. It's like if you're not gonna read Justin's lyrics, which are brilliant, like at least you'll kind of gather what we're trying to say here. You know what I mean? So that was a fun little thing to write, and that sort of blends into, I mean, I guess depending on if you're listening to like CD or record or whatever, but the next song that it sort of bleeds into is the instrumental track Unrequited, which is not my favorite song, but it's my favorite song on the record. I just love it. Like no one is going to be like, yeah, the instrumental track is my favorite, but like for me, like I love it. It's such a mood piece. Um and that was a good song because at some point during the writing process of the record, when I was pretty late into it, I actually started kind of taking guitar lessons again. I still take them with a fella named Kevin Hoofnagel, who plays in Gorguts, Dysrhythmia. He has a band called Vora, a band called Veldun. He used to be in Sabbath Assembly, like man of many hats, very talented guy. And I wanted to start playing. I wanted to start kind of taking playing seriously again. And some people hear me say that and they're like, well, it sounded like you were taking it seriously already. And it's like, no, I wanted to see if I actually could kind of break through my own ceiling. Because I didn't, there was a lot of years in my 20s when I didn't really try to get better at my instrument. And so it was really fun to start taking it again. And then like the solo in Unrequited was sort of like my, like taking everything what I've learned so far and just sort of being like, all right, well, like here's how I would write a solo now. And that was a sort of eye-opening experience of like feeling comfortable writing longer solos and being more dynamic, exploring the fretboard more. And I think it was all just to impress Kevin, though. I was just like, yo, check this out. And he was like, oh, it's great. And I know a few people like that one really hits them in the chest. One of my best friends, one of my lifelong friends, he always says that my solos in this band he's like, it makes me feel like I'm watching Manhunter. Like they all sound like cop drama solos. And I'm like, dude, perfect. Like that's all I want to do. Like that's it. So that was a cool song. And my dad lays some awesome synth near the end of that. And it just sort of, and it gives you like it's almost like a palate cleanser, like a few minutes to breathe before like the closing track, which is 16 minutes, which is just part after part after part after part. Like that Ecstatic Rain is like a tour de force of a song. I feel like no riff stays for more than like 30 or 40 seconds in that song. It's all going so many places. And I think that's Justin's favorite song. It has probably has some of the softest moments, but it has some of the most like gripping moments as well. Especially in the back half. It has has the weirdest stuff and it has the most tragic sounding stuff. It's like a song for all seasons or something. And the Richard Poe spot where the words he speaks for me, like it came out like so perfect. And it was like, I was like, oh, this is even better than the first album. And I was like really intense. And a couple people like that I have shown the record to were just like, yeah, like by the end of that part, like the last couple lines he says just felt like I was like a moment where I was like, fuck, I need to change my life or something. And I was like, oh, that's cool. Like, I love those. I think the songs I write are pretty melodramatic, for better or worse. And even anything else I work on, like outside of Tomb Mold and Dream Unending, has that kind of vibe to it. I guess that's just my style.
Nice. Tremendous job there. Thank you. Unrequited does give me, interestingly enough, so many things to unpack, but Unrequited, I had in my notes, reminds me of mid-era Ulver.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Not the recent Depeche Mode Ulver, which I also adore. I
Sure.
love that band. But yeah, they're like they did an in between period, in between like psychedelic rock, but also post rock, and that's where that lays a little lays. For me, I love the Hunter reference. Hunter's one of my favorite shows ever. Shout out to my best friend Curtis. I love Hunter, and anybody who wants to see, arguably one of the greatest cop shows ever, if you like cop shows from the 80s. Was the template for a lot of movies that followed, like Die Hard and things. Fred Dwyer, the former NFL player. It's on Tubi in America, and maybe Pluto TV everywhere else if you want to go see episodes of Hunter. But incredible show. What a bunch of references. Amazing.
The other thing I was going to say really quick about Unrequited is the other band where I feel like a thread runs through the whole record. I don't think our songs sound like them, but I think the approach and some of the vibe, Opeth, is, because they're a band that would be like, yeah, let's write like a 14-minute song where no repeating riffs. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But I feel like Unrequited is more colored by their album Damnation, which is just like all clean, which is my favorite Opeth record, actually. And that's not a hot take. That's not me trying to be like have a hot take or anything, but like I think that record is like special because there's no other Opeth record like it. And it actually kind of bums me out because I was like, you could do like three or four more of these. I wouldn't be mad.
It is their Zeppelin 3. It is incredible.
Absolutely. That's a good way of putting it. I never thought about that, but it actually totally is. Yeah.
And I think that album shape the rest of the band future. Like there's
Oh,
no question
without a
that
doubt.
like Watershed, even Ghost Reveries, you know, have
Yeah.
heaviness in it, but also light moments. And Michael's a genius, man.
Yeah.
And I hear that too, also. And I also was gonna say, Speed, you were mentioning Peaceville bands earlier, and I was gonna say again, not apples to apples, but Catatonia is another band that's like
Oh yeah.
ice cream
Yeah.
for my depression,
Yeah.
but also more depression after.
And they're a band. It's funny. Like I feel like all those bands, like they stayed good after like the classic records, but nobody ever really wants to give it a chance. Whether it's like I don't ever hear a lot of people talking about mid-era Ulver. You know what I mean? But it's good. My second favorite Anathema record is Judgement, which is like '99 maybe or something. Like I'll kind of follow Anathema into the grave though. Like I kind of love all their records for different reasons. Um, I respect the ambition of their records and like just not like the willingness to do whatever you want. I think that's like important. I think even Paradise Lost, like people I think will really sneeze at like their late '90s stuff where it's a little bit more like electronic. I'm for it, man. Like I'm for it. I don't care. Like I actually like that's I think at this point I'd rather listen to some of that than the first record. It is what it is.
You said it, and there you said it. Yeah, Gothic, man. I would put that right up there with anything they've ever done. And I just randomly saw both bands at Psycho, so at Psycho Las
Oh
Vegas.
yeah, nice.
Back to
Nice.
back, actually, which is insane.
Oh, that's
I
cool.
don't even know how. It's like, how did I get this lucky?
That is
Just as
that
we
is
wind this
fortunate.
down, I want to give you back your day. You've been
Sure.
amazing. I think we just became best friends over this interview. I'm not
I
sure,
think so.
but I think we're yeah. This
The
is
bond has definitely been
this is
strengthened.
Deep Space Nine,
Yep.
Hunter. You know, all these Peaceville bands, post punk. This changed my life. Pink Floyd. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for making the time.
Is there anything else you can share that's going on with you or your other projects that maybe we can be on the lookout for?
Yeah, an Outer Heaven record is coming, so that's cool. Two Mold always working on stuff, so stuff down the pipe, but nothing yet. But we're having a lot of fun. I think the Outer Heaven one will come first, but it's gonna be fun. I had a lot of fun playing bass for them on that record, man. I was very blessed they asked, and they seemed very pumped with what I gave them. And I think they were playing shows. I think they might have been playing some of the new songs. They have a guy that plays bass for them just because traveling is too impossible right now. But yeah, I'm stoked for that. It'll be nice. And then yeah, I'm just always working on stuff on the side. I love writing, and I'll write whatever and I'll find a way to put it out.
Amazing. I know it's what everybody is like. Ask him about Tomb Mold, and I'm
I
like,
know.
just calm down. This record, this record. Take
I
what
thought
you
that
get,
I thought the
folks.
tape would kind of help people
Yeah.
give us a break.
Fans are lustful and greedy, and it's hard
That's
to,
okay.
it's a good thing. It's not a
It
bad
is.
thing. They
It
want
is.
you.
No, it's good.
Yeah, Derrick Vella, man, thank you so much for hanging out with Ghost Cult
Yeah,
and me
you're very
today.
welcome.
Our
No, thank
fans
you.
are gonna love this interview. I
Good.
love this interview. Thank you so much, man.
I'm glad. I'm glad.